Have you ever wondered if those nagging gut issues could actually be linked to your genes? Well, today we're going to untangle that very connection. We're looking at conditions like IBS and IBD and how they relate to a super common genetic trait, one that literally changes how your body uses key nutrients. So let's connect the dots from your gut to your DNA and right back to your everyday health. Okay, let's kick things off with a number that might actually surprise you. 7 to 16%. Now, what is that? That's the percentage of the US population affected by irritable bowel syndrome. Think about that. This is not some rare, obscure condition. No way. It's impacting the daily lives of millions of people, which is exactly why understanding it is so important. So, what is IBS exactly? Well, it's defined as a functional bowel disorder. And that word functional is really the key here. What it means is, yeah, the gut isn't working right. It's causing real pain. It's causing changes in bowel habits. But, and this is a big but, there's no visible inflammation or physical damage to the tissue. See, it's a problem with how the gut functions, not what it's made of. All right, now let's switch gears and talk about IBD, or inflammatory bowel disease. And this is a whole different ballgame. IBD is a chronic disease defined by recurring and very real inflammation in the intestinal tract. You've probably heard of its two main forms, ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. So let's just put these two side by side for a second, because this is the core difference. With IBS, you've got a functional disorder. It's all about discomfort, but it doesn't cause lasting harm. With IBD, though, you have chronic inflammation that can and does cause real physical damage to the gut. The takeaway here is super simple. One is about function, the other is all about inflammation and actual disease. Okay, so we've got these gut conditions on one side, and we've got our genetics on the other. So what's the bridge? What connects them? Well, it turns out to be a critical B vitamin that you've definitely heard of, folate. And here's the first major clue. It's a very common finding in clinics that people with IBD, that's both Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, are often running low on folate. This isn't just a coincidence, it's a really significant pattern. And it makes you wonder, why is that? Well, there are a few key reasons for this folate deficiency. For one, the damage from IBD itself can make it way harder for the intestines to absorb folate in the first place. Then, of course, people often change their diet, right? They start avoiding folate-rich foods like leafy greens because they're worried about triggering symptoms. Plus, the inflammation itself just burns through your folate stores way faster. But one of the biggest factors is something that might actually surprise you. It's the very medications used to treat IBD. Yeah, let's zoom in on that for a second. Some of the go-to treatments for IBD, medications like sulfasalazine or methotrexate, are designed to interrupt certain pathways in the body. But here's the catch. An unfortunate side effect is that they also block the body's ability to absorb and process folate. This leads straight to a deficiency. And that's exactly why you'll often see doctors prescribing high doses of folic acid right alongside these drugs. Okay, so we've got IBD and its treatments causing low folate. Now let's add the next piece of the puzzle, the genetic factor. And that is a gene called MTHFR. The easiest way to think about this gene is like an instruction manual for a really important enzyme. And what does this enzyme do? Its main job is to convert the folate you get from food into the active form that your body can actually use. So the million-dollar question is there a direct link between having one of these MTHFR gene variants and actually developing IBD? Well, this is where the science gets a little messy, with findings that seem to point all over the place. You have some older studies that suggested a link with one variant, the C677T. Then you have others that found links only in very specific populations, while some found no link at all. And just to make it even more interesting, a big analysis in 2021 found a connection, but with a different variant, the A1298C. So the big takeaway here is that the research is definitely still evolving. So if the direct genetic link is still up for debate, what's the real connection here? Well, it all comes down to this one compound called homocysteine. And here's the key. Both IBD and an inefficient MTHFR gene can lead to high levels of homocysteine. And why should you care about that? Because high homocysteine is like fuel for the fire of oxidative stress and inflammation, the very things that damage the delicate lining of your gut. This right here is the powerful underlying link we've been looking for. All right, so we've laid out the whole problem. Now let's shift our focus to the solution, the path forward. And this brings us right back to folate. But more specifically, it brings us to the importance of active folate. So why is folate so critical in all of this? Look, it's not just some background nutrient hanging out. No, it's a frontline worker in your gut. It's absolutely essential for building new cells to repair damage, for making proteins, and this is huge, for helping to control that chronic inflammation that is the hallmark of IBD. I mean, Your gut literally cannot maintain and repair itself without it. And this is where everything really comes together. Not all folate is created equal, especially if you have that MTHFR gene variant. See, the synthetic form you find in a lot of OF supplements is called folic acid. To use it, your body must use that MTHFR enzyme to convert it. But what happens if your enzyme isn't working at full speed? You get a bottleneck. The solution? It's methylfolate, the active form. It just completely bypasses that whole MTHFR step. It's bioavailable, ready for your body to use right away. And for the up to 60% of the population with this genetic variant, this is an absolute game changer. Okay, let's wrap this up by hitting a few of the most common questions that people have when they're trying to connect all these dots. First one up, and it's a big one. Can an MTHFR mutation actually cause IBS? The short answer is no. There's just no direct evidence to say that it does. However, there are definitely some indirect links. An MTHFR variant can contribute to things that are factors in IBS, like systemic inflammation, and really importantly, reduced serotonin levels. And since serotonin is a huge player in gut motility, that indirect connection is something we really need to pay attention to. Okay, so the logical next question is, what about the other way? Can taking the active form methylfolate actually help with IBS issues? So while the specific studies on methylfolate for IBS are still pretty limited, we can connect the dots logically. We know that active folate can help modulate inflammation, and we also know that L-methylfolate is needed to make serotonin, which could help with the anxiety and depression that so often go hand in hand with IBS. So it's definitely a potentially useful tool to consider. And for our last question, does it work the other way around? Can having low folate by itself be a direct cause of IBS? You know, this really seems to be a classic case of correlation, not causation. Low folate doesn't cause IBS. It's actually more often an effect of having the condition, because of poor absorption, restrictive diets, or medication side effects. The best way to think of it is as a symptom, not the source of the problem. So there you have it. We've connected the dots all the way from gut conditions like IBS and IBD to the critical role of folate, and finally to the MTHFR gene that controls how we use it. We've seen that the form of a nutrient can be just as important, if not more important than the amount, which really leads to one final thought for you to take away. Now that you understand that your personal genetics can influence your nutritional needs, how might that change the way you approach managing your own health?